The film begins in the 1960s aboard the Antonia Grazia, a luxurious Italian ocean liner. The atmosphere is elegant and festive, with passengers dressed in glamorous evening attire enjoying a grand party on the ship's deck. A band plays a soothing, romantic tune, and a young girl named Katie, dressed in a formal outfit, stands apart from the crowd. She appears lonely but intrigued by the event. An older man, likely the ship's captain, notices Katie and kindly invites her to dance. She smiles and accepts, and they begin waltzing together. The scene is serene, almost magical, with soft lighting and a dreamy ambience. As the music swells and the dance continues, we see a thin steel cable being slowly tightened by a winch. Without warning, the cable snaps loose and whips across the deck at an incredible speed. The joyful atmosphere instantly turns to chaos. The cable slices through the dancing crowd, cutting through flesh and bone with horrifying precision. The scene is silent for a moment, as if the passengers don't yet realize what has happened. Then, one by one, they collapse, their bodies gruesomely bisected. Katie, being much shorter than the adults, is spared. She looks around in terror, seeing the carnage unfold. The captain, who was dancing with her, stares at her in shock before his head slides off his body. Blood pools across the deck as Katie screams, the only survivor in the massacre. The scene shifts to the present, introducing the salvage crew of the tugboat Arctic Warrior. This group of seasoned mariners, led by Captain Sean Murphy, specializes in recovering lost ships. They are approached by a Canadian Air Force pilot named Jack Ferriman, who informs them of a mysterious vessel he spotted in the Bering Sea. The crew agrees to investigate, intrigued by the potential treasure aboard the derelict ship. They set out across the open sea, guided by coordinates provided by Jack Ferriman. The atmosphere is a mix of excitement and curiosity, with an undercurrent of unease. Santos, the ship's engineer, takes the helm, tasked with steering their vessel through calm but darkening waters. The rest of the crew gathers in the lounge area, exchanging stories and speculating about what they might find. As day turns to night, the mood aboard the Arctic Warrior shifts. The quiet hum of the ship's engine is the only sound breaking the silence. Santos, alone at the controls, keeps a close eye on the radar, his hand steady on the wheel. Suddenly, the radar screen flickers, and a small blip appears, indicating an object a few meters ahead of their position. Unable to make sense of it, he quickly calls for Sean, the captain. He arrives, calm but curious, and takes a look at the radar. To Santos's frustration, the screen now shows nothing. Santos, convinced he saw something, becomes agitated, banging on the radar console and pleading with Sean to double-check. After some hesitation, Sean adjusts the settings and stares at the screen. To his surprise, the blip reappears, and this time it's moving closer. Alarmed, Sean calls for Dodge to activate the ship's spotlights and scan the waters ahead. As the powerful beams of light sweep across the dark sea, a massive silhouette begins to take shape. The outline of a colossal ship looms ahead, its rusted hull glinting faintly in the moonlight. Santos quickly kills the engine, bringing the Arctic Warrior to an abrupt stop. The sudden halt throws Dodge off balance, and he nearly tumbles into the water but manages to grab hold of the railing and scramble back aboard. The crew gathers on deck, staring in awe and disbelief at the enormous vessel before them. The ship is the Antonia Grazia, a long-lost Italian luxury liner. Its once elegant structure is now weathered and corroded, a ghostly relic of the past. Sean, his voice low and measured, recalls hearing stories about the Antonia Grazia. He explains that it disappeared in the 1960s under mysterious circumstances after a mass tragedy aboard, leaving behind no survivors and no trace, until now. Sean reminds the crew to stay together as they prepare to board the vessel. There's a palpable tension in the air as they gather their equipment, knowing they're about to step into a piece of maritime history, and possibly something much darker. The crew climbs aboard the Antonia Grazia, their footsteps echoing against the rusted metal of the deck. The ship feels alive in its stillness, creaking and groaning as if reacting to their presence. Inside, the ship is a decaying monument to a bygone era. The grand halls and luxurious interiors are now reduced to ruins. Faded wallpaper peels from the walls, furniture lies broken and scattered, and a thick layer of grime covers every surface. As they venture deeper, the group notices small, unsettling details. A child's toy lies in the corner of a corridor, its mechanism suddenly springing to life as they pass. The sound is jarring, breaking the eerie silence and causing the crew to exchange uneasy glances. While navigating a narrow passage, Munder steps on a section of weakened flooring. The rusted metal gives way, and he plunges through the hole. Maureen reacts quickly, grabbing his arm and pulling him back to safety. As she struggles to hold onto him, she glances up and sees a young girl standing silently below. Maureen, shaken, doesn't mention the apparition to the others, unsure if what she saw was real. The group eventually reaches the steering room, where the ship's controls lie in disarray. Rust and water damage have rendered the equipment useless. Dodge and Munder split off to investigate another room, where they make a startling discovery, a digital watch lying among the debris. The presence of the watch raises immediate concerns. Since digital watches didn't exist in the 1960s, it's clear that someone else has been aboard the Antonia Grazia in recent years. The crew regroups and discusses their findings, their initial excitement now tinged with apprehension. Back aboard the Arctic Warrior, the crew debates their next steps. Sean proposes towing the Antonia Grazia to shore, but the ship's deteriorated condition makes this a risky endeavor. They decide to wait until daylight before attempting any salvage operations. Maureen, still preoccupied with the image of the little girl, stands alone on deck. Jack approaches her, offering a jacket and a cigarette. Maureen confides in him, describing the ghostly child she saw. Jack listens but dismisses it as a product of her imagination, trying to reassure her. The next morning, the crew dives beneath the Antonia Grazia to assess its condition. They discover a massive hole in the hull, confirming that the ship is slowly sinking. After surfacing, they calculate the distance to the nearest island and conclude that towing the ship is impossible. It will sink before they can reach safety. Determined to salvage what they can, the crew decides to begin repairs by welding patches over the holes. While the others work, Maureen's curiosity gets the better of her. She ventures off alone, exploring the ship's decayed interiors. She stumbles upon a pool room, where the walls are riddled with bullet holes. The sight is chilling, suggesting a violent and tragic event took place here. As Maureen climbs out of the pool, she catches a glimpse of the young girl, Katie, standing silently nearby. Startled, Maureen loses her footing and falls, hitting her head. A couple of minutes later, she regains consciousness. Unbeknownst to her, blood starts seeping from the bullet holes and onto the floor, slowly filling the pool. As the crew splits up to explore the Antonia Grazia, Sean and Greer venture through the ship's dimly lit corridors. The air is thick with decay, the walls streaked with rust, and the occasional groan of the ship's structure adds to the ominous ambience. Sean's flashlight catches a sign reading Captain's Quarters. He pauses and tells Greer he's going to check inside. Greer nods, deciding to continue down the hallway alone. Inside the captain's office, Sean is struck by the eerie stillness. Dust covers the furniture, and the faint smell of mildew hangs in the air. On the bathroom sink, he notices a bloodied straight razor, its blade still glinting faintly. The sight unsettles him, sparking questions about the violent events that occurred aboard the ship. As he turns back to the desk, he notices something that wasn't there before, a glass of brandy sitting untouched. Confused but unable to resist, Sean picks it up, bringing it to his lips. Just as he's about to take a sip, his reflection in the mirror shifts. The old captain of the Antonia Grazia appears behind him, staring solemnly. Sean drops the glass in shock, and when he looks again, it's just his own reflection staring back. Meanwhile, Greer hears faint singing echoing through the ship. The melodic voice is hauntingly beautiful, drawing him deeper into the vessel. He follows the sound to a grand ballroom, its once opulent decor now faded and crumbling. As he scans the room, he notices a cigarette resting on the edge of a table. It has a lipstick stain, an incongruous detail that makes him pause. He picks it up, wondering if it belongs to Maureen. She's the only woman in their crew. Elsewhere, Jack and Maureen explore another part of the ship. They come across a room containing an old, rusted car. Jack, fascinated by antiques, marvels at the vehicle's craftsmanship despite its deteriorated condition. As they move closer, something stirs in the shadows. They cautiously approach, their nerves on edge. Suddenly, a swarm of rats bursts out of a nearby crate, startling them. Once the rats scatter, they peer inside the crate and find something incredible: gold bars, gleaming despite the years. Overwhelmed with excitement, they rush back to inform the rest of the crew. When they return with everyone, the sheer quantity of gold leaves them speechless. They realize they've stumbled upon a fortune, one that could set them up for life. As the crew celebrates their discovery, Santos gathers his tools to leave the engine room. Unbeknownst to him, a ghostly presence manipulates the gas lines, causing a leak. Elsewhere, Maureen encounters the ghostly girl, Katie, who cryptically warns her to stop what they're doing. Before Maureen can question her further, an explosion rocks the ship. The Arctic Warrior is engulfed in flames, and Santos perishes in the blast. The remaining crew is now stranded aboard the Antonia Grazia. Greer, devastated by the explosion and missing his fiancée back home, drowns his sorrows in the ballroom. As he drinks, the room begins to transform. The decayed walls repair themselves, chandeliers light up, and music fills the air. He watches in disbelief as the ballroom comes to life, populated by elegantly dressed guests clapping and dancing. A stunning woman approaches him, her beauty captivating. She kisses his cheek and leads him away from the crowd. Entranced, Greer follows her. She removes her dress and invites him to hold her. As he reaches out, he passes through her ghostly form and falls to his death, plummeting into the ship's depths. Elsewhere, Maureen searches for Katie, determined to uncover the truth. She finds a room where the girl's lifeless body hangs from a noose. Moments later, Katie appears, explaining that she and the other spirits are trapped on the ship, their souls bound by a malevolent force. Katie reveals that a man orchestrated the massacre aboard the Antonia Grazia, using the ship to harvest souls. She grows fearful, warning Maureen that the man doesn't want her to know the truth. Before disappearing, Katie urges Maureen to leave the ship immediately. Sean, deeply troubled by the unexplainable events, retreats to drink the brandy he had earlier ignored. The ghost of the ship's captain appears again, silently handing Sean a stack of old photographs. As Sean examines them, he sees images of men loading the gold onto the ship. Another photo reveals the identity of the orchestrator, a man Sean recognizes as Jack. Realizing the danger they're in, Sean attempts to warn the crew. Before he can act, Santos's ghost appears, blaming Sean for his death. Sean, overwhelmed by guilt and terror, begins to unravel. Later, Maureen finds Katie, who transports her back in time to witness the massacre aboard the Antonia Grazia. She sees the passengers poisoned during a lavish feast and a thin wire slicing through the crowd, killing them instantly. Katie shows Maureen how the crew was betrayed and murdered for the gold. The final revelation is Jack's true nature. He is a demon collecting souls for Satan. Determined to stop him, Maureen sets explosives to destroy the ship. Jack confronts her, revealing his mission and taunting her with her crew's deaths. A fierce struggle ensues, but Maureen activates the detonator. The explosion tears the Antonia Grazia apart. As it sinks, the trapped souls are released, ascending into the sky in a beautiful, ethereal display. Katie thanks Maureen before disappearing. Hours later, Maureen is rescued by a passing ship. As she's being taken away, she sees Jack boarding the rescue vessel, hinting that his sinister work is far from over. Maureen screams in vain, but it's too late.